Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to our panel today. This panel is called Financing Your Graduate Education, Finding Your Graduate and Funding It. Today we have a great person named Amy Leisenheim. She is going to talk a little bit before I present the presenters here. She's going to talk a little bit about the Sally Casanova Scholarship and how important that is to the future of your graduate studies.
Thank you, Maria. So hi, I'm Amy Leisnering. I'm the Associate Dean of Inclusive Student Success for the College of Graduate Studies. And I just wanted to share a potential opportunity for those of you all who might be thinking about going into a PhD program before the panel starts. Let me share my screen here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, slideshow, play from start. So this program is called the Sally Casanova California Predoctoral Program, and it's a program that provides financial and mentor support for juniors, seniors, and graduate students who want to pursue doctoral degrees at accredited U.S. universities. So this would be a great program if you're a junior or a senior or a master's student, and you know you want to go straight to a PhD program, or at least apply to a PhD program. This would be a great funding opportunity for you. So you have to be
Sorry, what was that?
I think someone needs to turn off their.
Can you please turn, hold on, can everybody please have their microphones on mute? I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. So basically, to be eligible for this student, you have to be an SJSU matriculated upper division or master's degree student who's enrolled at SJSU in the spring of 2021, and will also be enrolled at SJSU or another CSU campus for at least the fall semester of the next academic year. And applicants are required to have a faculty sponsor that will help them prepare for admission to a doctoral program. So basically, this is a great way to get a mentor and to get financial support in order to help you figure out how to apply to a PhD program. So we have tons of information about this on our website. And before I leave, I'll put the link right here in the chat so you can go to it. And we're also having a live question and answer session about the program on Monday, the 9th from 12 to 1, and we'll be recording that as well. And eventually then that recording will be on our website. So again, if you're thinking about going to a PhD program, I strongly encourage you to check out this program at least to see if it's something that you might be interested in. It's a great opportunity that not enough San Jose State students actually apply for. So we're really trying to push it. So like I said, before I leave, I'll put this in the chat. And if I'm actually not able to do that, you can just go to our website at the College of Graduate Studies, and under current students, go under funding, and you'll see information about it there. So thanks so much for letting me do this, Maria, and have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for announcing this. This is really important. Thank you, Amy. This is a really important scholarship that many of our McNair scholars have received in the past and currently. And it is just, they benefit so much from it being in that current program. So I thank you for coming to announce that Sally Casanova program.
Thank you. Here, I'm putting in the chat right now. There's the link. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks. So welcome, everybody. My name is Dr. Maria Cruz. Today we are going to have, we'd like to present to you the College of Graduate Studies, Peer Connections, along with SJSU McNair Scholars, co-sponsored all this for you to find out, well, how do I pay for graduate school if I'm deciding or thinking about going to graduate school. This talk is called Financing Your Graduate Education. And we have here with us Linnette Martinez, who is our McNair Scholars Program Coordinator, And we also have Anthony Bettencourt, who works at Financial Aid. And both of us three, will be talking about financing your graduate education today. So welcome everybody. And again, please keep your mics muted if you can. There will be questions, Q&A in the chat that I'll be looking at, and we'll be looking forward to seeing your questions. I'm sure you'll have many. And we will communicate like that. Hopefully by the end, we'll have a little bit of time if you really want to voice your question, and there's pending questions, you can speak. So thank you all for being here, making time, especially during this really stressful time. I know it's been a hard week, and I'm so appreciative of people's time right now, especially. So thank you. So here we go. So this is Anthony Bettencourt. If you want to talk about a little bit about this and the financial aid and the FAFSA, California Dream Act, we can go forward on that. Just tell me, next with the slide.
So you can go next. So hi everyone, my name is Anthony Bettencourt. I am from the Financial Aid and Scholarship Office. I'm excited to be here today. I love talking about financial aid. I attended San Jose State, and I really relied heavily on financial aid in order to attend college, and I need it in order to get my bachelor's degree as well as my master's degree. And so I'm happy to be in a position now to help students go through the complicated process of applying to financial aid and hopefully making a little sense out of it. Today we'll talk about financial aid at the graduate level, but I know during the presentation you may not have too many questions. Later tonight you may be thinking, oh, I should have asked that question during the presentation, or I wonder what he meant about this, or whatever the case may be. If you do have questions later on, what I'll do is I'll make sure to provide my email address in the chat box in a few minutes. That way don't hesitate to reach out to me in case you have any questions whatsoever about this presentation, about your financial aid for this semester, or financial aid for future semesters or different programs. So just starting off with some of the basics. What is financial aid? So financial aid is assistance offered to you and your family to help meet the gap between what you can contribute and what towards your education and what it costs to attend college. So it tries to bridge the gap between what you can provide and actual costs of attending college, because we know that colleges can be expensive at times. And so financial aid can come in different forms, not only grants, but it could be federal grants, state grants, work study, scholarships, stipends, loans. So there's a variety of different types of financial aid, different applications. And so we'll go through most of those today. Next slide, please. Great. So there's a few things. If I'm able to convince you of anything today, there's two main points I'd like you to leave with today on the financial aid piece. My number one suggestion is for you to apply. A lot of students automatically count themselves out. They don't apply for financial aid. They think it's too complicated, or they think, oh, I'm not going to qualify because my parents make too much, or whatever the case may be. However, there's been a lot of studies that determine that there are students who don't apply who would have otherwise qualified for grants had they applied earlier. So I really encourage you, if you haven't filed a FAFSA application or a Dream Act application for this year, do so. It's not too late. If you're thinking of going to grad school, make sure you apply for financial aid. And so my second point is to apply early. So the financial aid application won't take long for you to fill out. It's pretty straightforward. It'll take about 20 minutes or so from start to finish. However, the process is really slow. From when you submit your application to when you hear back from schools in terms of what you qualify for, it could take many, many months. And so you don't want to be in a position where you're waiting for your financial aid information to determine what school you want to go to, but you may have applied late, and so now you're going to find out that information later on. And so the earlier you apply, the sooner you'll be awarded, and that's going to help you in terms of having all the financial information needed, especially when you're determining which program or what school to go to. Next slide, please. So another thing that a lot of students don't necessarily know offhand is, as a graduate student, you're automatically considered an independent student for financial aid purposes. So what that means is your application will only be based off your income information and or the income of your spouses if you're married. We will no longer be asking you to provide information regarding your parents. So for a lot of our undergraduate students, not for everyone, but for a lot of students, during your undergraduate degree, you're considered dependent. And so we may have been asking you for your parents' financial information. And so you may have not qualified for financial aid. Let's say if your parents had a really high income. And so students get in the habit of thinking, oh, I don't qualify, I applied once, our parents' income is too high, and so when they go to grad program, they continue with that same line of thought. However, that would be incorrect. As a graduate student, because you're independent, we're only going to base your award off of your information. And often that can be really helpful for students because we're no longer taking into account your parents' income information, which may be higher, and now we're just looking at your income information. So traditionally, that may mean that you could qualify for more in financial aid. Let's see, next slide, please. So there is a few things to that. So credential student, so if you're going towards a multiple subject or single subject credential program, and you're not going towards a master's degree in education, you're considered a credential student, which is more like a 5th year undergraduate. So those students are still considered like a 5th year undergraduate, which means that you can be considered dependent or independent based off of your FAFSA information and how you answer your dependency questions. So in that case, if you are going to a credential program, keep in mind that we may be still asking you for your parents' information. And so just to break down what the types differences in financial aid for a undergrad student or a credential student compared to a graduate student, you would be considered for less than loans as an undergraduate student, anywhere from $7,500 to $12,500. However, if you are dependent, your parents would have the option of taking out a parent loan as well. Plus, you'll be considered for federal and state funding as a credential student. However, as a graduate student, when you're applying for financial aid, filing the FAFSA application or filing the Dream Act application, it's going to be a little bit different. You're automatically going to be considered independent for a grad program, and your loan limits you're going to see are going to be way higher. So for the FAFSA, when you apply, your loan limits are going to go up to like $20,500 in an unsubsidized Stafford loan. It's a lot higher than what you would have been offered as an undergraduate student. Plus, depending on what school you're attending, you're going to have the option of a graduate plus loan. And that could really vary from a few $1,000s to another $20,000 in loan offers. The downside is, although you're offered a lot more in loan funding, you're going to be offered less in grant funding, typically, especially in the federal level. So there's no federal grant for a grad program, so there's no Pell Grant. However, if you are in a CSU, or depending on what schools you're going to, there is state funding. And so you want to check in with each school that you're applying to find out what types of financial aid you qualify for based on the school that you're going to. Next slide, please. So how to apply. So what I mentioned a few slides back is you want to apply early. Good news is the application's already out. So if you are going to be attending San Jose State next semester or next school year, or if you're considering going to a grad school somewhere else, the application for fall 2021, spring 2022 is open now. So you can file your FAFSA application or your California Dream Act application currently. You don't want to postpone or hold off on that. So what you can do is you can file your application now. And even if you're not sure what schools you may be applying to, you can list multiple schools on your FAFSA and Dream Act application. Your FAFSA application will let you apply to 10 different schools at a time. You can then submit your FAFSA. Wait a few days for that transaction to be complete, and then you'll be able to log back onto your FAFSA application and list another 10 schools. And you can continue to do that until you've applied to as many schools as you think you will be applying to for grad program. So if it's 5 schools or 30 schools, make sure that you include them all on your application, so that way they can receive it, and then depending on which school you go to, then you'll be working more closely with that school. But for the time being, file your application early, even if you're not sure where, because it's really important. When you are considered for financial aid, often they'll look at the first day that you submitted your application, even if you don't know your admission status at that point. And again, process is slow, so we want to make sure that you receive your information earlier on than waiting until the last minute and being blindsided and realizing that there's additional documents that you had to fill out. Let's see, next screen, please. One more. And one more slide, please. Perfect. So there is a lot of differences between schools. If you're going to state school, private school, public school, how large the school is, if they have endowment. So every school is going to have a slightly different financial aid process. So a few things at San Jose State, if you are coming, we'll have our scholarships opened up in January. You can click on our scholarships tab. students can apply for that. You could be a student who filed a Dream Act application or a FAFSA application or an international student, and you can apply for our scholarships. This will be scholarships for the next academic school year, so fall 2021, spring 2022. These are scholarships that are handled at the university through San Jose State. Now, if you're going to other schools, they're going to likely have their own scholarship process. Some schools will handle it where it's one central application that you apply to. Other schools will be based off of the program that you're in, and it really varies. So I can't stress enough, if you know what school you may be considering or leaning towards, it'll be worth your time to check in with them, find out what scholarships they have open, when to apply, and just get a general timeline of when you should be applying. Another thing I want to point out is your application for financial aid is always based off of income information from 2 years back. So for example, right now, students for this fall semester were awarded off of tax information from 2018. Now, obviously, a lot's happened since 2018. 2020 has been a crazy year. People's income changes, family income changes. You may be in a situation where you're making less income now than you were in 2018. And so schools are aware that this can happen. And so each school tends to have a process where we can address that, where we can update your financial aid based off of your current situation. So instead of awarding you off of 2018 information, we can award you off of either 2019 or 2020. So when you're applying to grad school programs, if you're applying now and you're going off of 2019 income information, if you're applying for next fall, just keep in mind that the schools do have a lot of authority in order to update your application and make sure that it really meets your current financial status. And so don't hesitate to reach out to them to explain to them what your current situation is, to make sure that you're awarded the correct financial aid that you qualify for. Plus, they'll be able to give you any hints or tips on other forms of financial aid that you may be able to apply to. Great, next slide. And then I'll be sure to leave my email address in the chat in the next few minutes. Thank you. Now I'll pass it on to Linnette.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Yeah, you pointed out some great information there about applying early, making sure you apply, and you have to apply every year. Just those are reminders. Just because you go to, I think some people get confused when they go to graduate school that they don't have to apply anymore every year. You have to apply for financial aid every year that you're in that graduate program. So that's really important. And apply early, for sure. I like those tips. Thank you so much.
No problem at all.
Now we'll have Linnette Martinez. If you could just tell us a little bit about where you went to school, what you majored in, and your talk today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Linnette, and I'm the McNair Scholars Coordinator for the McNair Scholars Program here at SJSU. I did my undergrad at UC Santa Cruz, major in psychology, and decided to go into educational counseling here at SJSU. And so I now have a master's, and definitely applying financial aid is very important. And we'll discuss other types of aid that you can get on top of financial aid, which becomes important, especially for those who are thinking of possibly going into doctoral programs. And we'll discuss the various aids. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the next few slides, I'm going to discuss very common terminology that you'll be hearing during the next few slides. So one of them is scholarships, just as Anthony mentioned. These are types of funds that can be used to help cover the cost of tuition, books, and other fees. Next, please. Grants. So similar to scholarships, they're merit-based, meaning they may be based on your GPA, or even need-based, which means based on the financial need that you need. And part of that may come from applying to FAFSA or even the California Dream Act. And it's money that you don't have to repay. Next, please. Fellowships. So fellowships are more short-term funding opportunities, and they typically range from 9 to 12 months of funding in the academic year, or even the full year, provided to students in the form of either tuition credits, so it may be used to pay for tuition, or even stipends, so this may be money awarded to you that you can use. And there's two different types of fellowships that we'll be discussing. The first one is university-based fellowships. And then the second one is external fellowship. So this means outside of the university. Next, please. So the first one is university-based. So these are fellowships that, depending on the school you're applying to, you're going to get these fellowships through that campus, whether it's a fellowship through the department you're studying through, or even the college itself. And many fellowships will have their own stipulations, which we'll discuss more in the next few slides. Most of the time for these fellowships, you either have to apply, be nominated, or even go through a formal application process for the university-based fellowships.
Can I say something about the university-based fellowships? When I was at the University of Texas, Austin, there was different departments that would collaborate with each other, like the Mexican American Studies Department collaborated with Anthropology and so on. So sometimes you'll get monies from two different departments with one application. So you got to look at outside of your department, there's also monies. Think about that. I didn't know that until I was in university when somebody told me I can get money like that. So think about your department, but also think about sort of some of the resources that these departments share with each other, because they often have monies across the board that go across. So it's not just your department. You can get monies from other departments as well.
Thank you. Next slide. So the second type is external fellowships. So this is money coming outside from the university from private sources, and this can come by either government agencies or even other groups. And it may also apply to those who are either in the US or coming in as international students, and it may be able to use abroad. And usually with external fellowships, because they're private based, oftentimes they're portable, meaning if you had to go from one institution to another during your graduate experience, you may be able to carry that fellowship and transfer it as well.
I'd like to say something to that. Yes, external fellowships are super important if you are going to be a person that may be wanting to do research outside of the specific space that you're doing graduate work in. For instance, myself, I did a lot of work in Mexico. So these external fellowships were extremely freeing in the sense where once I finished my prerequisites as far as my schoolwork, I was able to go to Mexico and live off of some of these fellowships, external fellowships, like the National Science Foundation, like the Ford Foundation. Those are one of them I did. I got the National Science Foundation, and those are really big fellowships, but there's also a lot of smaller ones that people apply to and get as well. So I'm highly recommend that you apply to external fellowships if you're thinking about doing research outside of the space that you are physically in. Very helpful in that sense.
Next slide, please. Now, part of the fellowships, or even depending on whether you're going to apply as a graduate assistantships, there are several different types. And so basically these assistantships are for students who are hired to either perform instruction or research or even administrative duties during your time as a graduate student. And the goal of any assistantship is to provide service to the university itself that you're going to. In turn, they aid you by paying you to do this service. And so there's a couple different types that we'll mention in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So the three different types are teaching assistants, similar to assistant lecturers, and even research assistants. Next slide, please. So teaching assistantships perform a wide range of support for faculty members. So this can include either being a TA for a class and helping the professor grade papers, or even may mean that the teaching assistant has to teach a class themselves to help the department. And assistant lecturers, so lecturers may serve as instructors for the academic department where they are studying at. So this may be something important for those who may have already a master's degree and are working on their doctoral degree, may see these types of opportunities to become an assistant lecturer. Next slide, please. Now, funding overview. So merit-based, often type A's include fellowships, grants, and scholarships, both external and internal. So something you want to consider is where you're at in terms of GPA, because a lot of these types of funding may be based off of GPA or even the GPA within your major, as well as university awards. So going back to scholarships, depending on your department, you may want to apply to scholarships if they are available. Even graduate assistantships may be based on merit when you're applying. And of course, we have need-based, which will come from FAFSA as well as the CA DREAM Act. This may also include work study. So you may receive work study if you apply for FAFSA or the CA DREAM Act as part of your aid package. And of course, loans are part of more need-based student aid.
So I'd like to add a little bit to that. So when I was a graduate student, I did do the TA-ship and the assistant teaching. And those are great, not only great, you get money, right? But great opportunities if you're thinking about going into the professoriate, a level of teaching. It gives you experience in regards to teaching. It gives you experience in regards to grading, and you get paid for it. Also think about if you're going out of state, like I went out of state, right? And I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's these out of state tuition fees that you must pay sometimes. And for me to be a TA the first year, I think, or the second year, they were able to waive all those fees, all those out of state tuition fees, which is really great. So think about that when you're looking at your package when you're applying, because oftentimes they'll do that.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So some of the considerations that you want to take in account of when applying for funding is that most assistantships and fellowship may require you to be a full-time student. So if you're considering to be a part-time graduate student, some of these assistantships and fellowships you might not be able to apply to. So take that into consideration. Also, very important that if you're applying to any type of funding, whether that be a fellowship or even graduate assistantship, that you understand the terms of your funding. This includes the benefits that you receive, whether it only applies to tuition, travel, research, housing, or even healthcare. The requirements, you do want to understand what is required of you in order to receive this type of funding, such as, is it requiring you to teach a certain amount per semester or even perform a specific type of research? In addition, you want to understand how long your funding will last you. So you want to understand the length of the funding, as well as not just the length, but the stage, because some fellowships only apply to your maybe first 2 years, whereas if you're going for a doctorate and you're doing your dissertation, there's fellowships just for those who are working on their dissertation. So that's something you want to take into consideration. In addition, just as a reminder, a lot of them may be based off of merit. And that's why it's also important to apply to FAFSA. You want to get as much funding as you can from multiple sources. In addition information is, if you're applying to internal funding, some internal funding may require you to apply to FAFSA anyways, so that's something to take into consideration when you're applying to FAFSA. There are more funding resources available for doctoral programs than there are for master programs. So I don't know if Dr. Cruz, you have more to say on this.
Yes, for PhDs, what you'll always hear, I think, is that master's students who are in master's programs where there's a PhD program usually end up paying for those people who are getting their PhDs. So on your way to a PhD, if you're applying to a master's PhD program, most likely you will have a lot of your master's and PhD funded, right? Through the department or through the departments or through your external external monies, right? Fellowships. And so what happened to my screen? Do you still see my screen?
Yes, but not the PowerPoint.
Well, what happened? Anyway, so external, I'll get that up in a minute. So external, what do you call it? External monies help a lot. So, but so does the department. And being a graduate student, you'll get monies hopefully from outside sources and as well as inside sources. But master's students typically have to pay for their own master's program if you're only applying for the master's, right? Most master's students have to pay for that. And it gets really expensive depending on where you're at. You have, if you're going to move far away and you're going to go, you know, somewhere like to, I don't know, New York, or what's another expensive place? Anywhere on the East Coast, probably Washington. If you're going to do that, it's going to cost you a lot of money, right? A lot of money to move, a lot of money to be there, paying for expenses of housing. And most of the time you won't get funded from the department if you're just getting your master's. So that's why I highly encourage like all our McNair scholars to apply to the master's PhD programs. And then if you can't get in that way, I often say, okay, well, find a program that has both, right? The master's and PhD. And if you do get into the master's and say it's in California and you don't have to move far away and there's money there, a little bit of money, then you have this chance of getting into the PhD program because you already know and have made contacts and networks with professors in that institution, right? So that helps a lot in regards to funding if you're going to stay for the PhD part. But I highly encourage students to apply for both, the master's PhD, because that's what usually departments want, right? People who are doing masters and PhDs. But you can't get the master's without the PhD, right? You can't go to get the PhD without the master's along the way. But yeah, there's very few. We've had like a couple of McNair scholars, one of them who went to Columbia University, who did get like 80% of just the master's funded, but that's very rare. So you have to think about also private versus public schools, right? Private schools tend to have more money, even sometimes for master's students, like Columbia University had monies to pay for this student to finish her master's. And so that was great. And so she made great contacts. She's well connected there now, and now she's going on to the PhD in the same space because she made these networks, meeting networks of people. So give me a minute. I'm going to put up that slide again. I guess that phone call just threw me off and threw the whole thing off. So I'm sorry. But if you want to say anything else to that, Linnette, that would be great while I try to put this up.
Yeah, along with receiving a master's degree, I think for those who are just going to master programs, I think you really need to consider the possibility that you may have to take out a loan. And this is because the type of aid that you're receiving in undergrad is not going to be the same type of aid you may receive in graduate school. Again, there's graduate programs that do offer grants, but that may actually not be enough. So if you're not able to get enough funding, you may have to consider loans for master programs.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, these are technical difficulties I'm having.
No worries.
And so where were we? We were somewhere here.
A little bit further.
We're right there.
2 more slides down.
Mm.
And the next one. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that portion of what to consider. Next slide, please. When to apply. So a lot of external and sometimes even internal fellowships or even graduate assistant aid, you will have to apply right when you're applying to graduate school. So this may be a little bit earlier than applying to FAFSA or even the CA DREAM Act. Next slide, please. So most application funding, especially for external sources, and I will, towards the end of this presentation, present a couple of examples of external resources you can use and find funding. And so most of the applications begin winter or even early spring, the year before your degree starts. So if you're applying graduate school for fall 2021, you have to start applying now for also external funding for graduate programs. Next slide, please.
Yes, I would like to say something to that. Most students don't think about applying to funding until they're in, which is not good. You got to start thinking about applying to external funding as well, like right now. Some people say, well, I'm not there yet. I haven't gotten in. I don't know if I should apply. Apply anyway, because you never know. And it's always, if the worst thing happens, they say no, right? At least you have a good, solid draft of what you want to write once you're in, and what you want to, the monies you want to get. At least you have a good solid draft of of that personal statement or statement of, or whatever the statement that most outside sources for funding ask for, right? You have a solid draft of what you want to talk about, what you want, how you want to write that, how do you, so it's not a lost cause if people, you know, if someone, if the external funding says no, there's no, it's never a lost cause. It's always, you know, it's a work in progress, and hopefully the next year you'll get it. That happened to me. I applied to all these things. I didn't get them the first year, but I applied the second year because I had a solid draft. I had solid professors who were supporting me, and I was in. So that's something to think about.
So just as a reminder, both internal and external graduate fellowships, this is more in regards to fellowship deadline, typically fall between October and February to fund the following academic year. So this is something you're going to have to most likely keep doing every year on top of applying to financial aid, is applying to other sources of aid during the month of between October and February every year. Next slide, please. So we'll talk a little bit about what is really needed when you're applying to either fellowships or even sometimes scholarships or assistantships. Next slide, please. So some of the application requirements may include personal statements. So be prepared to write a personal statement. More specifically stating why you think this PhD program can help you reach your goals and what you plan to do afterwards, because schools do want to see, especially funding sources want to see, what is your overall plan. In addition, they may request a resume or even a CV, which is similar to a resume, except a lot longer and really based more on your academics. Letters of recommendation. So be prepared to have several people in mind in which you want to ask, preferably professors with PhDs if you're applying to funding for PhD programs. So keep that in mind. I would say have at least 3 people in mind that you can ask for a letter of recommendation from. Also be prepared to show any type of income verification. This may include tax information, proof of residency. So you may have to let whoever you're applying to know how long you've lived in the state, as well as academic and research proposal. So these are statements separated from your personal statement that really focuses on your academic and research. And then searching for funding. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can search for these internal and external sources. So searching for funding for internal sources. So something you want to get to know is your department website, because there should be an area within your department in which they may have a separate tab just for funding. So take a look at that, as well as the campus itself. Sometimes the campus itself, like Dr. Cruz said earlier, there may be funding sources in other departments that you could still receive. So also take just the university as a whole in mind when you're applying to funding resources. This can include scholarships, grants, fellowships, and graduate assistantships. And a lot of these will also require you to apply to FAFSA in order to receive any sort of internal funding. So keep that in mind. Next slide, please. Other internal funding resources. So for the CSU is the Sally Casanova Pre-Doctoral Scholarship Program, which we had our presenter Amy at the very beginning discuss this, so definitely check that out. Even think about becoming a residential life advisor. So these are the people who are in the dorms, and oftentimes they get free housing and free meals. This can really help you in terms of not having to think about housing and how to pay for housing if you had to move for graduate school. Also, if you actually work for the university, look into whether or not you qualify to receive a discount for free tuition, or even just for the campus to pay for a few classes. SJSU has something similar in which they'll pay up to a certain number of credits. So look into the university if you're working at a university and see if they can pay for any classes. Sometimes schools will have undergraduate advising programs in which you can receive funding towards your academic credits. So take a look at that, see if your campus offers anything like that. even tutoring programs. So there are programs on campus that are tutoring based, and you may be able to receive extra funding for that as a graduate student. So take a look at that, do some research, and see if your campus is offering that. Now for external funding. So for researching external funding, you're going to have to research through research engines. I also would recommend that you check out any associations that you may be a part of, such as the American Psychological Association may have their own for those who are psychology majors. That's just an example. Even private and government websites. So on the next few slides, I will give a couple of examples of where you can search for those. And you can even search within databases. So these are examples of external funding resources that you can search through. So such as collegescholarship.org, grants.gov, unigo.com, profellow.com. And again, just as an example, check out your association. This is the website that you're seeing on the screen for the American Psychological Association. Even you may want to check out your banks. Your banks may have scholarships for students, for graduate students, even service loaning, such as Sallie Mae. Sallie Mae, even though they loan out money, they also have scholarships. So definitely check out those loan services and see if they have any scholarships. Okay, so these are types of examples of government funding. So the first two examples is through the US Department of Defense, and they're more focused on those who are more science and engineering based research. Same thing through the Department of Homeland Security. They have funding for those who are going into STEM. And the National Institute of Health, those who are interested in biomedical. And this is another one to really check out is the Fulbrightonline.org. They have a range of different funding for different majors, and this is through the Department of State. So definitely check that out for external funding. Next slide, please. Oh, so for the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellow, definitely check this one out. It's definitely government funded. And why it's important, it's because it touches on science and social science research. And it may include specific master programs, but it's typically for master programs that are research oriented. So that's something to take note. If you're going to apply to a master program and you're applying for funding, be sure that the funding is for your appropriate master program, because there is a difference between a research-based master program and those who are not, and are terminal, what we call terminal master programs, meaning they're more meant for the professional field and not to continue in research. So for this one in specific, they cover 3 years over a 5-year period, and they give an annual stipend for $34,000 and can cover the cost up to $12,000 for the cost of education itself. Next, please. So here are some resources, and this can apply for international students as well, is the Fulbright US Student Program. So there's a link that's just specifically for foreign students. So this can go for both undocumented students and international students. So check that out if you're planning to apply to either master's or doctoral programs here in the US and want to apply to external funding. We also have the International Education Financial Aid, which is also another source of external funding, and the Institute of International Education. And so if you're under DACA, which is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, you may want to check the university's policy for fellowship eligibility. You may need to be under DACA to receive some of these, so definitely check out the terms of the funding that you're applying for.
Yes, I would add that. Definitely check that out. I'll definitely call the institutions if it's not on a website, and if you can't find the information, I definitely would. Well, right now there's nobody in the actual spaces sitting at the desk, maybe, but there's probably other ways. There's like chat, like we have chat in our SJSU campus where you can chat with some of the administrators, some of the people that are working in the offices. That's probably the case across the country right now. So I would definitely if you're not sure, get a hold of that department, get a hold of that space in place to see what they do have, what their policies are, especially outside of California, right? In California, it's very different than other states. So highly recommend that you do your research on that if you're going out of state specifically as well.
Next slide, please. So if you're under AB 540, definitely apply to the DREAM Act. This is just a website from the University of California in which they let you know more information about how they support funding for undocumented students through the University of California if you're applying to their master's or even PhD programs. And if you visit Immigrant Rising is a great website because they actually have a list of graduate fellowships for undocumented students, and it's over 20 pages long. So I highly recommend that you visit immigrantrising.org and check out their graduate fellowship resources. All right, so that is pretty much it. Do we have any questions from the audience today? You can unmute your mic, you can type in the chat box. I'll be looking at both.
Yeah, and I apologize for not being on the chat because I was trying to make sure I don't lose the screen. So, you know, these technical issues do happen. I'm so sorry, but I'll look at the screen. Thank you for this information. Yes, thank you for this event. This is specific financial aid available for international students. Thank you. So thank you. It says for this event, is there a specific financial aid available for international students? And that is very specific to each space and place, just like we said, right? International students have to apply to different, I think, monies inside institutions, and depending on the institution, it all depends on how much they're going to give you. I can't answer for all the universities across the nation, but there are spaces and places who are very helpful to undocumented peoples and international students. So that's where I think you were talking about, Linnette, about doing the research, right? You really got to do the research in that place that you want to be attending. So, and we could share, this presentation will be shared. We will have it on video. I know that Deanna Peck will be having this on video, so we'll have all this information if you want to access it. Let's see, anybody else? Can someone send the link? So he did that already. Thanks. Thank you for information. This made me think about what I can start looking into. I have to go to my class. Have a great afternoon. Okay. So I don't see any questions in the chat, but if there's any questions, live questions, this is great. And I'll stop sharing the screen.
I have a question. So about, I guess, what percentage would be nice for, I guess, to be financially supported through like fellowships and scholarships for one to choose to go ahead and go into the master's or PhD program?
That's a good question. That's where you have to look at the graduate program that you're going to and find out what does that cost, right? First, you got to know, when you buy a car, you want to know what the cost is, right? What are you getting for that car? I would say the same thing. If you're looking at graduate schools, first thing you should look at these graduate schools, of course, for their magnificent programs and the magnificent work that you're going to bring to it and you're going to share back and forth. But what is the cost of being in that school? What did they say? Is it $30,000 a year, which includes tuition and fees, or is it $30,000 a year without tuition, right, and fees? So you got to really look at that number to try to figure out how much you need, right? How much you're going to get, how much you think you might get, because if you have financial aid, that's a good chunk, right? And if you get loans, if you're going to get loans, that's another way of paying for graduate school. But if you're looking for those fellowships and those external fellowships, that's a huge help. I would say for me, I went to the University of Texas, Austin, and it wasn't as expensive as it was in California at that time. It was actually the same amount. I was paying the same amount out there as I was for my undergraduate UC Berkeley experience, right? So every semester would cost like $3,000 or $4,000. So I had to figure out, okay, how much do I need for this for every year? And you're figuring you're going to be there for 5 years. If you're getting the PhD, it's at least 5 years. But if you're going for the master's and you're going to pay for that master's, make sure you know how much that costs, and look at what fellowships, scholarships you can get to pay to help you pay for that master's, right? It just depends on where you want to go and where you want to be.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Abril?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And to add on to that, one thing that can be confusing is when you're looking at schools is often they'll post their cost of attendance. So for example, at San Jose State, the cost of attendance, it'll take into account not necessarily what you're going to be charged by the university, but how much we think it'll cost to attend during the academic year. So for our undergraduates, tuition and fees per semester is roughly about $4,000 per semester. So for the year, $8,000. But your cost of attendance, if you look at it, could be anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000, depending on if you're living on campus or off campus. So when you're looking at grad school programs, you're going to see these really high sticker shock prices of their cost of attendance. Keep in mind, that's not necessarily what you're going to be charged. So you want to look at, taking into account what you'll be charged at the school versus all these other factors that play into it, where like, are you going to need to relocate, go to a different area, find different housing, things like that, because everything you're going to want to consider into your budget, not just what you're charged by the school, but just realizing that you may not be able to work if you're in a master program or in a PhD program, because it's going to take a lot of time from you. So that's where the loans and other financial aid options come in to hopefully help out as a safety net.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Abril. Great question.
Maria, hi Linnette, hi Anthony, it's so nice to see you all. Thanks for hosting. This isn't a specific question. I think Linnette and Maria both know that I am looking for research opportunities in hopefully getting teaching and learning to get treated as a legitimate science earlier than later, especially in the STEM fields. So I've been trying to do my due diligence in that regard, but I just wanted to thank you all for hosting. And if anything comes your way in terms of CS PhD programs that have a catered focus in like students' learning needs and cognitive science, please forward it my way.
All right, Henry. I'll take a look at that and I'll let you know.
Definitely. Thank you, Henry. We've been getting bombarded by all kinds of schools lately in regards to their online virtual sort of welcome. This is what this program is like. We'd like you to apply. So we're definitely trying to get those institutions and that word out. So definitely, Henry, if we see something.
I think there's hope. I've been speaking to a few deans in the engineering department in the College of Science, and they said that there is an upward trend in getting teaching and learning to be respected as a science. So definitely. There's hope.
Yay. You'll be the leader of that hope, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Saying thank you, everyone. Thank you. I keep seeing thank yous in the chat. Thank you all for being here. I'm telling you, these are hard times, and so for anybody to take the energy and time to be here is wonderful. Someone have another question?
Just when they'll be able to see the recording, but I know we're going to send it to Diana, and Diana will.
Yeah, Deanna Peck will. I'm going to send this to Deanna Peck, and then once that's, she's going to figure out what to edit, when to put it up. I'm not sure when, but we have the list of all of you here, I think, right? They're registered, so we have your emails. So I'm sure we'll be able to send it to you. I'm sure Deanna Peck will be able to send it to you. Somebody will send it to you if you need this, because it's a great PowerPoint. And I'm sorry I messed up on it a little bit because it was just my computer. I don't know what was happening. I would press the thing and it wouldn't go forward. And then it went way forward. So I apologize again. Well, thank you.
So is there an opportunity to still apply to like scholarships, fellowships, financial aid even after you've been admitted and say you're like second year, third year at that graduate program?
Yes, always apply. Like I said, I applied, the first year I got in and I didn't get what I wanted, right? But that draft and whatever I did and all my letters of rec and everything and my CV and everything that I had to get together for that fellowship was not for nothing, right? I did all the work and I didn't get it the first year, but the second year I was super ready because I had all these drafts, these wonderful drafts of things that I've done and just added to my work. So definitely apply even if you don't get it the first time, whatever it is that you're applying to, apply the second time. You'll have a stronger package, I think, because you have learned or gotten feedback in regards to why didn't it work, right? Why didn't this person, or why didn't the statement work, or what did I need to tweak, or things like that. So definitely you can always apply. It just never, you should apply every year if you can, to outside resources and inside resources within the university.
Okay, I'll make sure to do that then.
Yes. And apply, because if you don't apply, you're never gonna know. I always tell students, don't say no to yourself first. Let them say no. So just apply, you never know. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much. I think we're gonna wrap it up. We're good on time. Thank you, Anthony, for bringing your expertise to this panel. It was wonderful. It was great. I hope we get to do it again with you. Thank you, Linnette Martinez, also for being here. I'm Maria Cruz. I'm happy that I was able to do this and we were able to do this. Hopefully we can do this again. I'm sure it's much needed information that we should be doing like every semester for students who are thinking about graduate school. So I thank you all.